June 1962. 3 men vanish from the most feared prison in the world. San Francisco Bay runs at 7 miles per hour. Water temperature, 50 degrees Fahrenheit. No prisoner had ever escaped this island and been confirmed alive. The question the FBI never officially answered is not where they went. It is how they dug through it with a dinner spoon. The answer is not in the FBI files. It is in the chemistry of the concrete. In 1910, when this complex was built, a mistake was made that would take 52 years to collect its debt. It was not Frank Morris's genius that opened that wall. It was the chemical incompetence of the people who built it. Alcatraz wasn't defeated by criminals. It was defeated by physics. The story we are telling today is of a fortress that was already crumbling from within, long before the escape. 52 years. That is how long the ocean needed to dissolve a prison built to last for centuries. Today, we are opening the wall, seeing what was inside, understanding why a metal spoon was enough to bring down the most expensive prison in the United States. Frank Morris was not the smartest mind in this story. The ocean was. Alcatraz Island is a sandstone and shale outcrop in the middle of the bay. No river, no water table, and therefore not a single drop of fresh water. 1 million gallons of water arrived by barge every month. If fog closed the bay and the barge was delayed, the prison was in logistical collapse within 48 hours. The story of Alcatraz begins before the prison. In 1859, the U.S. Army built a military citadel here. In 1910, the new federal prison was not built from scratch. It was stacked on top of the previous structure, 1,500 feet long. When completed in 1912, it was the largest reinforced concrete building on the planet. The labor was forced, military inmates. That cut costs. But it compromised something no budget can buy back: quality. The engineers used whatever aggregate they had on hand, the island's own rocks. In times of shortage, they used brackish water to cure the concrete. The salt entered the mix on day 1. Healthy concrete has closed pores and a dense structure. Alcatraz concrete was born full of voids and invisible enemies already inside. The construction cost was $250,000 in 1912, roughly $8 million today, a staggering sum for a structure already compromised at birth. In 1934, the federal government spent another $260,000 on upgrades. Heat-treated steel bars impossible to saw through, state-of-the-art electromagnetic metal detectors. A technical footnote: the steel in those bars was harder than the blades used to cut them. Any attempt just destroyed the tool. The government had built a fortress without equal. Uncuttable bars. An isolated island. Lethal currents. There was just one problem. Nobody was looking at what was happening inside the walls. Behind every cell was a utility corridor just 3 feet wide. Inside, uninsulated steam pipes. Permanent moisture. Total darkness. These corridors were never monitored. They were considered irrelevant, too narrow to pose any threat. What the 1910 engineers failed to calculate was the environment. Alcatraz sits inside one of the most corrosive bays in the world. Technical classification: marine environment, C5. The highest level of atmospheric corrosivity recognized by international construction standards. Salt in the air. Salt in the water. Salt already inside the mix since 1910. The structure was surrounded by the same poison it carried within. Keeping a structure like this running was expensive in 1934, and producing videos with this level of technical depth costs even more today. If you value engineering that refuses surface-level answers, your like is the only tool that tells the algorithm to keep delivering this content to you. And if you want a front-row seat when we tear apart the next great structure in history, hit subscribe. Epic Engineering is not just a channel. It is a construction site for minds that think big. Now, back to the miscalculation that physics never forgave. The enemy of Alcatraz had no name in any security report. It appeared in no FBI file. It was called Alkali-Silica reaction. The chloride ions from the sea spray did not stay on the surface. They worked their way through the pores of the concrete by capillary action, like water climbing through a sugar cube. Inside the concrete, every steel rebar is shielded by a passivation layer, a thin chemical film that prevents oxidation. The chlorides break through that layer. From that moment, the steel begins to rust. No break, no reversal possible. Oxidized steel expands to up to 6 times its original volume, inside a material that does not give. Concrete was not designed to handle internal tension. It handles compression. When steel pushes outward from within, concrete does not negotiate. It cracks. It spalls. Engineers call this process spalling, the sound of concrete popping and falling as the iron grows inside. By 1962, that was the constant sound inside Alcatraz. A structure self-destructing in slow motion, 24 hours a day. Now add the heat from the steam pipes. For every 18 degrees Fahrenheit of temperature increase, the rate of the corrosion reaction doubles. The utility corridor acted as a slow oven, baking the concrete from behind, year after year, decade after decade. There is a number that defines concrete's point of no return, pH. Healthy concrete operates above 12. Below 9, it chemically loses the ability to protect the steel. By 1962, the pH of Alcatraz's concrete had already dropped below 9. The fortress had lost its chemical immunity years before the escape. Frank Morris arrived at cell B138 in 1960. 2 years of observation, just listening to what the walls were saying. At the back of each cell was a ventilation grill, 6 inches by 9. The engineers had calculated that no human body could fit through it. They calculated correctly. No human could fit through the grill. What they did not calculate was that the concrete surrounding it was no longer concrete. It was powder. For anyone who wants to bring a piece of this engineering home, the Lego architecture San Francisco skyline is the definitive collector's item. Alcatraz is right there, in microscale, alongside the full city skyline. Link in the description. If you prefer to go deep on the history, we also have books on the subject of this video. All at the same link. Back to the wall. Morris did not bribe anyone for dynamite. He did not obtain an industrial drill. He brought only an improvised metal spoon and a motor stripped from a discarded vacuum cleaner. The spoon did not need to be strong. It just needed to be harder than the concrete. And by 1962, Alcatraz concrete had long since lost that contest. There was still the problem of noise. Digging through a wall makes sound, but degraded concrete is a poor acoustic conductor. It works like a sponge, absorbing, not carrying. And there was an unexpected ally. Alcatraz allowed inmates to play instruments at set hours. Morris used that time window as cover. The accordion masked the mechanical frequency of the digging. The porous concrete absorbed the rest. The guards heard nothing. Physics worked for the escapees the entire time. While digging, they crafted fake bars from soap and painted toilet paper. During the nightly head counts, guards were looking at replicas. After just over a year of silent excavation, the opening was ready, and the path to the roof clear. On the night of June 11, 1962, 3 men stepped out through the place where the concrete had surrendered first. 3 men on the roof. The bay ahead. 1¼ miles of 50-degree water moving at 7 miles per hour. San Francisco Bay is not a still lake. The water must pass through the Golden Gate Strait. Alcatraz sits right in the middle of that funnel. On an ebb tide, which was running that night, water velocity surges. Engineering estimates put it between 5 and 6.5 feet per second. Swimming against that is the equivalent of trying to walk up a full-speed escalator going down. Without protection, hypothermia would have paralyzed them in under 20 minutes. So they built a raft. Over 50 rain ponchos collected across months, hand-stitched and vulcanized using the heat from the pipes of that same utility corridor. The corridor that destroyed the concrete supplied the heat to build their salvation. The irony of engineering is rarely that precise. The math was straightforward. Enter the water before the tide turned. Use the current as an ally. Do not fight the funnel. Cross it at a diagonal. The next morning, guards found 3 cells fitted with soap bars. The FBI was called in. The largest manhunt in the history of the American prison system had begun. They were never found, alive or dead. The FBI officially closed the case in 1979. Official conclusion: presumed drowned. Presumed. A word carrying 60 years of doubt. Because the ocean returned no evidence. No bodies. Nothing at all. What we have no doubt about is what was left behind. 3 holes in a wall fitted with soap bar grills. And a prison the government would close less than a year later. The escape was not the cause of the closure. What it exposed was. In 1963, housing 1 inmate at Alcatraz cost $10 a day, 3 times more than any other federal prison in the country. The structure needed between $3 and $5 million in emergency repairs alone. It was cheaper to build a brand new prison on the mainland. The last inmate to leave the island was Frank Weatherman. His words on the way out were blunt. Alcatraz was never good for anyone. The prison warden had already signed memos about concrete degradation years before the escape. The structure was not crying out in silence. It was screaming. Nobody wanted to listen. Alcatraz was not defeated by Frank Morris. It was defeated earlier by entropy, by the salt that entered the mix in 1910 and never stopped working. Morris, for his part, did not beat the law. He exploited the chemistry. He found the point where decades of corrosion had turned a fortress into powder and walked through it. Today, the island draws over 1 million visitors a year. The same structure the government could not afford to maintain became a national historic landmark. The lesson Alcatraz leaves behind is about what happens when maintenance is treated as a cost and chemistry as a detail. The most feared fortress in the world fell because of overconfidence in a wall that had already given up from the inside. If this video cracked open something you thought you knew about engineering, the like button is the fastest way to tell the algorithm to keep going. And if you want to be here when we tear apart the next great structure, subscribe is the only step left. The next build is already on the floor.